many as of you know, the Grand Families and Kinship Support Network is a federally funded technical assistance center, and we exist to support professionals just like you who are from government agencies, tribes, and nonprofits who work with kin caregivers or grand families. You can learn a lot more about our work as well as how we can provide assistance to you on our website. And one of my coworkers will be putting the link to our website in the chat. Today's learning community is the second part of a series on trauma-informed care, and specifically how trauma can impact grand families, the caregivers who are caring for grandchildren or other relative children or close family friends. So I'm going to pass it over to one of our partners, Kathy Kinsner with 0 to 3, to introduce today's agenda as well as our speaker. And again, we are so excited all of you are here and really look forward to this next hour together.
Thank you, Kylie. I'm Kathy Kinsner, and I'm the Senior Manager of Family Resources at 0 to 3. We are a proud partner in the Grand Families and Kinship Support Network. We are a national nonprofit devoted to making sure all babies have a strong start in life through the power of nurturing relationships. And we do that through programs and resources that are aimed at families, professionals, the whole span, childcare to pediatricians, and also policymakers. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dr. Mike Sherman, who will be leading our discussion today. He's the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Clinical Consultation Manager for Safe Babies. That's one of our programs at 0 to 3. He is our go-to expert on all things IECMH. Mike is a licensed clinical psychologist and Napa UC Davis Infant Parent Mental Health Fellow. For more than 15 years, he's worked at the intersection of community mental health and child welfare programs, and that includes direct service, supervision, training, consulting, program development, and administration. This is our first project together, and I have been very impressed with the depth of Mike's knowledge, as well as his ability to listen, to be curious, and to withhold judgment. We've planned this learning experience to be a little different than a traditional webinar. We've limited the number of participants so everybody has a chance to talk and gather ideas from each other. We can share a more personal approach, starting with a breakout session where we'll tap into your knowledge and experience as we explore a case study together. Mike is the perfect person to help us do that. And with that, Mike, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Very glad to be coming back to this space to have this second in a series of 2 conversations about really supporting young children, which means supporting those that care for them. And in this scenario, it's grand families and kinship support. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to facilitate this conversation, to engage with all of you and think a little bit deeper about the scenarios that we encounter in our daily work, whether you're providing therapeutic supports, whether you're a direct caregiver for a child that is part of your family, whatever scenario you're finding yourselves in, you bring a lot of expertise to this conversation. And certainly we hope to invite you to engage in some conversation with each other and in the shared space that we'll have together as well. Let me jump over to our slides really quickly and we'll get going. Okay, so hopefully that looks okay for everybody. As Kathy mentioned a few moments ago, we both represent 0 to 3, along with our colleague Rebecca Parlakian, who's here with us. And again, our mission is to ensure that all babies and toddlers have a strong start in life. And when we think about babies and toddlers, they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in the context of the caring, enriching, nurturing relationships that surround them. And so if we hope to take care of babies, we have to take care of the people who care for them. And so having the conversation that we'll have today really gives us an opportunity to think about the needs of everybody involved in these relationships, whether it's the perspective of the little one and how they're navigating their developmental experience, or the perspective of grandfamilies and others who care for young children in our communities. Before we dive into the content, really wanted to talk about a few shared agreements. This is a shared space, so how we navigate it together is important to name up front. Want to make sure that everybody's able to contribute in a way that feels meaningful and also creates opportunity for all of us to share our voices in this space. So if you're a person that tends to be very gregarious and it's easy for you to jump in, I think certainly welcome that and invite that, but also try to be mindful of allowing other people to have opportunities to share as well. If you tend to be quieter, recognizing that this space has no judgment in it whatsoever, there are not really right or wrong answers to anything. This is an opportunity to have a conversation. And certainly we're inviting you to step into that space with the rest of us. We're going to have different perspectives based on our lived experiences, based on how we view our interactions with kids and where we come from and the lenses we apply to that. And so just holding respect for other opinions, even if we don't agree with them, is an important point to be conscious of. Additionally, we are going to have some breakout spaces where people might share their personal experiences, and whether it's coming back into this shared space with all of us or having conversations in other spaces within your communities, I think the encouragement is to share what you've learned rather than sharing other people's stories, right? Especially if that's identified by who the person was who shared it. So avoiding referring to either colleagues or clients or other people in this space by name if you're communicating about what you learned from the conversations we've had together today. We invite folks to be fully present. We're here for about an hour together. And so hopefully you're able to join us. Welcome folks to hop on camera if you're able to. Certainly in the shared spaces and in the breakout rooms, we'll have conversations with one another. Some of that will be with your peers. Some of that will be us who are here in this space as facilitators, sort of joining just to get a sense of how those conversations are going, maybe contributing a few additional considerations into that space. But again, not here to judge, not here to evaluate, just really have a conversation together. And as you need breaks, please take them. We trust everybody's intent to be here is for the purpose of learning. And so also trust that if you need to step away, there's a good reason for that, and invite you to do so. And ultimately, this is a shared co-constructed experience, so definitely appreciate your participation and welcome it. This is part 2 of a series of conversations that we're having. So just to give a little bit of an overview, because I know about half of the people that registered for this session were not in the previous session. We did talk quite a bit about trauma-informed care for young children and those that care for them. And these are just some of the core principles of trauma-informed care that are shared with us by SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They talk about principles of safety, right? Ensuring both that physical and psychological environments are secure, removing potential triggers that we know might cause a pretty strong response from the children and families we support. The importance of trustworthiness, right? For people who are navigating trauma, trust is a really important factor. And it's not something that we can assume, right? We know we have good intentions, but they don't know that yet. And so it's up to us to demonstrate that we're worthy of their trust. Peer support is an incredibly useful resource, certainly both for kids in terms of having supported peer relationships, but also for those of us who are caring for them. And so resources like Grandparents as Parents and other community support organizations can be incredibly useful and promote healing. Collaboration, the idea that raising kids in today's society is too complex for anybody to manage on their own. We need support, we need thought partners, we need people who can step in when we need to step out for whatever reason. and having the opportunity to have those meaningful collaborative relationships that really support our clients and our community members in really coming to decisions together. And finally, this idea of empowerment, right? It's one thing to tell somebody what they need to do, it's another thing to help them arrive at that decision and supporting their ability as people who are invested in the children who they care for to really make their own decisions, to make their own choices, to have their voices heard, and to empower that as an incredibly strong advocate and protective factor for that child's development is a part of trauma-informed care. So some of the things we'll invite you to do today is we'll start with a first vignette that I'll share with you in just a bit. We'll then shift you over into breakout rooms with other colleagues and peers and give you a chance to reflect on some of those questions that are going to be provided and linked to you in chat and also exist in the documents and the PDF that was shared with you previously. And so let's take a look at our first case study. So this is Oliver, and Oliver is a 4-year-old African-American boy. He lives with his maternal grandparents, age 82 and 78, who have been caring for him since birth. His mother lost custody of him due to chronic mental health and substance use challenges throughout her pregnancy. Oliver's mother currently resides in another state and has no regular contact with Oliver or the family. Oliver's grandparents have expressed their frustration with their lives not being what they imagined they'd be doing in retirement, and the anger, guilt, and questioning of their own parenting decisions they made with their daughter throughout her life. Oliver attends a local preschool where the staff report his behavioral challenges have been difficult to manage. His caregivers report that his difficulty following verbal directions, is reactive to loud noises, and is generally disruptive and aggressive in class. His grandparents describe his energy as so much to deal with. So as we sit with that for just a couple of seconds and let that absorb, we're going to transition over into our breakout spaces. And here are some of the questions that we'll invite you to consider together. Which of these grandparents' experiences would we want to know more about to better understand their needs and perspectives in this scenario? What would we want to know more about to be trauma-informed in our interventions with Oliver? How would you identify and address your own biases in interviewing family members? What steps might you and your staff take to provide trauma-informed care? And what additional resources might be available in your community, and how would you ensure appropriate referrals? So you don't have to answer all of these. These are suggestions for discussion to facilitate, as a starting point, your conversations. Feel free to dive in and look forward to hearing back from you when you come back in about 15 minutes. Welcome back to the shared space. Definitely the space that I was in was having some really rich conversation. And I'm wondering if folks have some takeaways or reflections from their conversations that you'd like to bring into this shared space so we can learn from each other. Invite folks to come off mute or, if possible, use chat, whichever way is easier to share what your perspectives are.
If I might say, for our group, I really appreciated that everyone is thinking hard about what the needs are and what changes can happen, and they're making it happen in their specific communities. But those communities are limited to that area. And so what is ideal is that these fabulous ideas and things that are happening, that they spread out to a lot more areas and counties and states so that more can benefit from the innovation that they're doing.
I was also in Mary's group, and one of the things too that I didn't consider when the story was told was about the other side of the family, like the dad. Where was that person at, and um, why was there no conversation or involvement? And so I think that that's something important for us to think about too.
So often we lose the dads, right?
And for many, many different reasons, right? Our systems don't traditionally engage dads in the same ways that they could. And that's another opportunity for a meaningful relationship for a child that may not have that opportunity otherwise. If from the get-go the communication is, well, you're not invited to the space, so you don't feel like you truly belong. Not always, not for everybody, but often enough
Yeah.
where it's a challenge.
I was in with Jill and Linda. Um, Linda and I reconnected from the years past, and one of the things, my name is Joe, and one of the things that was interesting in our group was that we started off by looking at what was unique about kinship and how we needed to make a difference between what's happening now between the caregiver and the birth parent with what happened in the past and how much of the past is carrying over into how the caregiver is feeling and how much of it is carrying over into how the birth parent is feeling. And even talking about how much of this is carrying over into the child, because we don't know what this child's been hearing about mom over the last 4 years. So we didn't know how much of the behavior was related to their dynamics and how much the behavior was really related to school and how much of the behavior was related to prenatal issues as well. So we started looking at
Mm,
trauma from two or three different directions, in terms of
yeah.
prenatal, the caregiver, because we know caregivers get triggered, as well as what was happening prior to the placement of that child and how and is that stuff and is that still carrying over. And the other thing was we were talking about please connect with mom, you know, because they're so left out, of the intervention,
Mm-hmm.
the caregiver seeing the mother as part of the solution, not
Mm-hmm.
just the
Mm.
problem. Okay.
Right. Right.
But eventually we ended up with everybody needs some help. Mom needs some help. The caregiver needs some help. Child needs some help. Then we had to do some dyad work between the mom and the caregiver.
Yeah,
Then we could get to the child.
absolutely.
So
No, it's
yeah, we enjoyed it ourselves. Yeah,
such a rich perspective,
yeah,
right? And it kind of brings up this idea that we have to individualize our support to the specific needs of the family.
yeah,
We can't just do a one size fits all and just give a list of resources and say go do these things. That doesn't meet the need where it exists. I think I really love that you're highlighting and the conversation your group had, this idea, in infant early childhood mental health, we talk about the idea of having ghosts and angels in the nursery, right?
mm,
Things from relationships long ago that show up in how we parent, how we grandparent, how we form relationships with others that are a part of our story that the baby has no relationship to directly, but it continues to show up and impact how we perceive and interpret their behavior, right? So for all we know, this little 4-year-old can be a very typical 4-year-old
mm-hmm,
doing very typical 4-year-old things.
mm-hmm,
And to the grandparents, given the history, they're perceiving it as a little bit more bothersome than they would otherwise. And we don't know until we ask, until we stay curious and help them explore some of that meaning behind what they're seeing.
Mike, to build on what you and Joe were saying, I remember doing a training years ago about children who are separated from their parents and maybe in a grand family or kinship situation. And the person leading the training said, you know, often we unintentionally give children a message that their birth parents are not, good people, right?
Mhm.
And that two of the most unintentionally hurtful things we can say to a child is one, you're just like your parent, and two, you're nothing like your parent. Because the
Mhm.
child still wants to feel that connection to their parents. And so I mean, I probably went to that training 10 years ago, but that has always stuck with me, is a child wants to feel connected and like their parent. But often, they find it hard to find those pathways into connection, or they're compared in a negative way. And so just thought it was a good add to this conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, just such rich dialogue. I think one other aspect that came up in our group was, unfortunately, there are judicial officers, there are people that show up with the intent to help, and they say things that are the opposite of what they intend, or sometimes they're not the opposite of what they intend. Sometimes they intend to say them as they say them, and sort of, the message of if you had done a better job when you were parenting your child, then we wouldn't be
Mhm.
here today, right? And just how that feels,
Mhm.
right? The impact that that messaging has, and the unfortunate impact that that messaging has. And a lot of our group really highlighted that the work of raising your grandchildren is an incredible gift
Mhm.
to the child, to their parent, oftentimes to the people involved in having the opportunity to raise this little person in the world, and certainly to the community,
Mhm.
right? And I'm missing a lot of the detail because I dropped in for just a bit, but definitely invite folks to kind of where does that lead? That train of thought, what comes up for you?
I feel guilty. Um, I did a whole series with Casey, Annie E. Casey, on based on deficits. And in fact, the name of the training was Managing Risk Factors in Kinship Families. Okay. Because I came looking at deficits related to guilt and embarrassment and projection and fantasies and denial. And Casey still uses it. But then it also led me in this last decade to do a whole training around the inherent strengths in kinship care. And one of the things that I talked about identity and legacy and breaking cycles and healing and co-parenting and developing identity, kind of what Rebecca was talking about, how to talk positively about that birth parent, the power, of giving the child, if you're going to relate, you're going to do it. But here's how we can do it. And that's a strength that a caregiver has, you see. So I guess it's kind of like, I think we now move, to answer your question, I think we have to move more into looking at caregivers becoming aware of their strengths, because they are so quick to get into what did I do wrong? What was wrong with me? This child is a reflection of me. They're so much into pain. They're so ambivalent, and I think a lot of our work has to do with getting caregivers to see their strengths, what they bring to this that only they can, that a stranger can't do, and building up for that and making it conscious, because I think for a long time they push it down and we don't bring it up. We've got to bring the one that says to them that things about that birth parent that nobody else does. The secrets. Here's how I remember how they were that you can relate to. Or mirror for them how to handle the pain, because my pain is just as serious as you, because that's my mother, my brother, my sister, my son. Foster parents and adoptive parents can't talk like that. Caregivers can. And this is how I'm going to handle it. So it's not destructive to you or things around me. So how do you handle pain? And you're going to be the first one that's not going to be using. That's a family thing. You're going to be the first one to go to college. You're going to be the first one to be, you know, and caregivers have that strength. So it's kind of like giving them that scripts and these things we're talking about here to enhance how they can become strong. And a lot of times they don't appreciate it, you know. So I think for us to now have that approach with caregivers is just so important in helping them heal and getting them to look at this is what, even regardless of what happened in the past, these are things that you can do now. You know? I'm sorry if I'm rambling, you know.
No, no, no. You're reminding me of this idea of parallel process, right? How we
Okay.
are with the caregivers is
Yeah.
ultimately showing them how they can be with the children in their care.
Right. We model.
Focusing on their strength, if we're
Yeah.
encouraging them to think outside of the
Right.
guilt and the traditional deficit models for thinking about themselves, then
Mm-hmm.
they can use that same approach now that they felt the benefit of it with
Right.
the little ones that they're caring for. It's
And I
really
love it when I hear therapists say, now remember when I said, now they even have the script that they could use with their kids. Do you remember when I said, and I remember when you said, you know, you could use that same script because caregivers are always getting into how do I say it? What do I do? You know, so I think them having the script and that dialogue is something that we can give as well as the model. It just kind of goes right along with it. You know, I love it when the workers, when families say, don't tell me you're going to tell me this and this. I know what you're going to say. You know, oh, I'd have done my job. You know what I mean? Because now it's their script, you know, their monologue, and now they could use it with the kids. You know, don't talk about yourself like that. Oh, I said that to her. You know, and you hear it. So yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm in retirement, so I'm loving this. This is like making me want to come back out, do some code work, workers, and with everybody here. You know, it's just so nice.
we need all the help we can get. Not trying to drag you out of retirement, but wondering sort of any other topics that maybe we haven't had a chance to get to that folks feel really strongly about elevating for our consideration.
You know what used to also wonder me when I feel that there's trauma in the caregiver. What do I say? You know, to get them to address it, or I used to just refer it. You know what I mean? You need to talk to somebody, but you know, what do you want us to be saying to them? Acknowledge it or validate it, or you got some trauma in there. You need to go back. How do I do it in a way that gets them to when I recognize it? You know.
I think one thing that you should not say to a caregiver, that this happened to me one time at the Department of Social Services, and I composed myself, but I asked to speak to the supervisor. Um, the phrase, "The apple don't fall too far from the tree." That is a phrase that I don't think anybody should say to a caregiver. Because what you're saying is, you didn't do such a good job with raising your own. Why do you think you're going to do such a good job with raising your grandchild? And that's not a good thing to say to a caregiver, um, because they're already in a stage of wondering how I'm going to make this. How am I going to make this work? And then you say to them, well, you didn't do a good job in the beginning. That's yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, just don't say that. Please don't say that.
Then that makes me think that I shouldn't even be saying to a caregiver, "You're traumatized." I don't know if that goes along. I always feel like that's another put down, which is implicit is you're not healthy enough to take care of this child. So maybe that's another
Correct.
one of those don't say, but acknowledge that hey, you got some feelings that it's valuable. You need to feel it, and you need to take it somewhere.
Yeah,
You've been holding it all inside. Take it
yeah,
somewhere. I don't know, Linda. See, you a
yeah.
caregiver. Am I saying the
That,
right thing, Linda?
that's better.
Oh,
That's
I like that, Linda. Say that's better. It ain't just
that's
perfect, but that's better.
that's better.
See,
Lisa,
we can
jump,
laugh
jump
because we
in.
know each other, you know. But yeah, what do you say? I don't know if you should say trauma, especially if it's trauma is a word that's a put down, that's bad mental health, mean that you can't do it. But to validate those feelings and to let them know that they need to
Mhm.
get it out and that here's a number that you can call, or can I refer you to someone to talk about those feelings? Because those are real. You know what, Linda, I used to hear this worker do? You know what I heard in the group, Linda, in a respite group, was the group said to this caregiver who was experiencing trauma was, you need to talk to somebody about this. You're still hurting. I got that from caregivers, and I use it, Linda. You know, validate it, but redirect it, because if you don't, guess who it might come out on?
The child.
Thank you. See, you in the group, Linda. You see, you would have fit right into the group. But yeah, I learned that from peers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a
Mm-hmm.
right to hurt that way, feel that way, but you got to talk about this more. You can't just leave this with us, because if you don't, you might take this out on, and then the person chimed in just like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's a number you can call, or go to your respite group, or go to your parents group, but get this out. And I don't even care if it's something that goes back to something that happened to you, whatever it was, but you got to get it out, because if I can feel it, a child feels it.
Yeah. And another thing, Dr. Crumley, I'm still doing support groups. I retired and came back.
See?
So if I come back, you can come back.
Linda, I am not going to call me. Linda, call me. Let's talk.
Okay.
Please.
So what happens in this group that I did one time is I did a role play, because as grandparents we have a habit of yelling with the children.
Your energy, you're forceful. Yeah, go ahead, Linda. I don't have to justify you.
No, we more than forceful. So what I did is have them to do a role play. One will be the grandparent, the other one will be the child. And then I asked them, well, and then they reversed it. And then I asked the grandmother or the grandfather, how did that make you feel when somebody was yelling at you?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make, and to be honest, they said, I ain't feel too good. I was angry.
Right. Okay.
So my question to you is, how do you think that child feels when you yell?
Mm-hmm. And if you stayed in a heightened position of energy and anxiety, which is one of the traits of trauma, and you just carry it with you, right? Your tone of voice with that child elevates, and you're in the elevated feelings, elevated sensitivity. Yeah, so even though I'm not talking about trauma, I'm talking about how are you going to address those feelings and that behavior with this child. Oh, go ahead, Linda. That was so slick.
One of
But you
the
knew we were dealing with trauma.
Yep. One of the things we talked about last time is that as a caregiver, like your brain is fully developed. The kiddos in our care, their brains aren't there yet.
You
And
going
so
into
we
brain
serve,
science. My
right?
God.
We serve as a co-regulator. We are either co-regulating or we are co-dysregulating. There's no way an upset adult can help a child feel more settled. That doesn't work, right?
Gotcha.
Our nervous system is
Right.
triggering their nervous system. They're making us more upset. And we just get
Right.
into this cycle of everybody's just upset with each other until our
Right.
relationship suffers, right? So how do we preserve the relationship and show up in a way that we can help settle and calm and nurture their upset? Us being upset on top of it doesn't have a way of helping. It just
What
doesn't.
I like what you're doing, Mike, is getting that caregiver to think about changing their behavior and indirectly dealing with the behavior that's a result of or symptomatic of. So you're dealing with the symptom of a trauma, but I'm talking about the behavior with the volume. And then if I can, and then slip in there, Mike, where did you learn to talk loud like that? Ooh, now I'm getting ready to go back.
Yeah.
We talk to you that way. And now we're going to break some cycles. Oh, that's slick, Mike. I like that.
Now, this is such a rich conversation. I'm also recognizing we have about 5 minutes left to go. And so I think there's a little bit of housekeeping. There's also a whole other vignette on the back end of that PDF that I'll invite you all to continue to peruse together. And, it sounds like there's a follow-up conversation that at least a few of you are looking to have. And so bring that into that space, bring that as a source of facilitated discussion into any of the spaces you're in to elevate some of these same considerations, some of these same very rich, very nuanced experiences that you're all bringing into this space in order to build insight into how to better support those who are caring for their little ones and also take into consideration what we know from research, from brain development, from trauma responsive care, from all of these different components of our work. This is the highlight of my week. Thank you guys for the conversation we're having together.
My pleasure.
And not so little ones. Fully agree.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We
Yeah.
appreciate this.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel prepared for facilitating my panel in 3 weeks with 0 to 3 with caregivers on trauma. That's why I was into the trauma thing. I was told to watch this Zoom in preparation for. I was instructed, and I'm so glad I got it. Yep, that's right, Linda. Yeah, so trauma, caregiver trauma is the focus of that next webinar.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so please cue in if you can.
Yes, I will.
And you too, Mike. Maybe we can co-present or something. I don't know, Mike.
Let's explore.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today, and thank you to
Kylie. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Crumbly. It's good to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks to Dr. Sherman and to 0 to 3, the whole team for facilitating this really important conversation. As a reminder, as Dr. Crumbly just said, the final session in this series is scheduled for Wednesday, June 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you have registered for that, please make sure you attend. We did have to close registration as we hit our max. But if you have a question about if you had registered or not, just send us an email and we'd be happy to help you out with that.
Oh,
And
Kylie,
lastly,
bring everybody in, Kylie. Bring everybody in on this.
all right. We'll do it. Send us an email if you'd like to attend that session, and we should be able to get a few more in. And lastly, we would love to stay in touch with you. So if you have any questions about how we can help you serve kin caregivers in your community, please visit our website to request assistance. We are putting the link to that in the chat. You will see on your screen right now a webinar evaluation poll. If you can take just a minute to complete that right now before you log off, that information is really helpful for us as we plan out our webinars and how we can make sure that the topics that we have are most relevant to this community. And you can stay up to date on what we are doing by registering for our monthly newsletter. You'll see the link to that as well on our website. And stay connected with us on LinkedIn. We are posting there often about all of the work that we are doing in the community with all of you and all of the great work that each of you are doing. So we'd love to stay connected with you either through the newsletter or through LinkedIn. So thank you again to 0 to 3 and to Dr. Sherman for today's discussion. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.
Thank you. You as well.
Yes, thank you. Pleasure.
Great to see everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.